And we're on chapter 18 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, M at Dakshineshwar, part 2. And we're starting off in December the 26th, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna, accompanied by Manilal, M, and several other devotees, was in a carriage on his way to Ram's new garden. The garden, which Ram had recently purchased, was next to Surendra's. Ram adored the master as an incarnation of God. He visited Sri Ramakrishna frequently at Dakshineshwar. Manilal Malik was a member of the Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmos did not believe in divine incarnations. Oh. The master to Manilal. In order to meditate on God, one should try at first to think of him as free from upadis, limitations. God is beyond upadis. He is beyond speech and beyond mind. But it is very difficult to achieve perfection in this form of meditation. And so we think of God free of any limitation. That would be really no form, no boundaries, no identifiable handle at all. That we should think of him at first like that. That is Brahman, that which is beyond speech, that which cannot be bound in any way. Because that's the reality of the divine. And at the same time, by the grace of that same divine, the lesser is true, meaning he does, and sometimes at least a portion of that divine being manifests and becomes, I guess, relatable to us. Sinks themselves into this water of delusion, and also believes themselves to be a body mind, and also places themselves in time and space and causation, and take on a past, a present, and a future. But all of that is done for our sake, as a means of really, just like you would jump into a pool to save a drowning soul. So Mother jumps into the waters of Maya just to pull her children out, to show us the way. But it's difficult. We should initially try and frame God in that divine unmanifest, and begin to think that way. He says, but then he goes on. He says, but it is easy to meditate on an incarnation, right? God born as a man. Yes, God in man. The body is a mere covering. It's like a lantern with a light burning inside, or like a glass case in which one sees precious things. And that's not just the incarnation. I mean, that's every single one of us. That's one of the things I like in the book of John, in the first chapter, where it says, in the beginning was the Word. That's the same as saying in the beginning was Shakti. It's like Word is that vibratory, that manifesting principle. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So you've got that same paradox that we have in Vedanta, where there's one looking like two, the manifest and the unmanifest, but in reality, they're a singularity. As a singularity, the Word is God. As the duality, from our perspective, on this side of ignorance, Word is with God, but Word is not God in that sense. So the two are there. So we see Mother and we see Father, but really they're both unified in parenthood, as it were. Right? And so we meditate on God with form because it's easy. He has emotions. She has emotions. She has looks in her eyes as she stares at us in love, as she reaches out to us. But every one of us has that same, if you read farther down in that book of John, that first chapter of that gospel, it goes on to say that the word continued to manifest as all of us. The avatar, the incarnation, is the purest, the highest concentration of Word, the purest form of Word that can still maintain a body. And then you and I are, somewhere out in the field somewhere, way down the line. Yes, God is man. The body is a mere covering. It's like a lantern with a light burning inside, or like a glass case in which one sees precious things. And this is the beauty here, that each one of us has this little light, this little battery of love that motivates our life, that activates us and puts us in a situation to respond to the universe around us. But I like the second part too, that it's like a light in a glass case in which one sees precious things. This is where our value comes from. Our value comes from that divine presence within, which is of an infinite value. It is what gives life meaning. When we forget that, life becomes very materialistic, becomes very very dull. It doesn't catch fire easily. And so, one of the reasons that we practice is to rekindle this awareness of that which makes us beautiful, that which makes us valuable, that spark of love, that spark of divinity that's within us. Arriving at the garden, the master got out of the carriage and accompanied Ram and the other devotees to the sacred Tulsi Grove. Standing near it, he said, "How nice. This is a fine place. You can easily meditate on God here." Sri Ramakrishna sat down in the house, which stood to the south end of the lake. Ram offered him a plate of fruit and sweets, which he enjoyed with the devotees. After a short time, he went around the garden. Next, Sri Ramakrishna proceeded towards Surendra's garden. He walked on foot a little distance and saw a sadhu sitting on a couch under a tree. At once, he went up to the holy man and joyfully began conversing with him. "Master, to which order of monks do you belong? Have you any title, Giri, Puri, or the like?" So he was just wanting to know what lineage of monasticism, what lineage of guru did he come from. It's one thing you learn at sannyas is, our lineage, guru lineage. And so all of this is very important. So he's very excited to see this monk in the garden and joyfully wants to sit down and chat with him and kind of know what his background is, what is his lineage. And from that, he'll be able to know really what the man is practicing, what his ideal is. The sadhu responds, "People call me a Paramahamsa." Master, oh, that is good. Have we read this? No. Maybe I read it. That is good, Ramakrishna says. I am Shiva. That is a good attitude. But I must tell you something else. The process of creation, of preservation, and of destruction that is going on day and night, it's due to Shakti, the very power of God. This primal power and Brahman, they're one and the same. Shakti cannot exist without Brahman, just as waves cannot exist without water. There cannot be any instrumental music without an instrument. As long as God keeps us in his relative world, so long we feel that there are two. If one accepts Shakti, one accepts Brahman as well. If one is aware of night, one is also aware of day. If one is aware of knowledge, then one is also aware of ignorance. You see, this is really, I don't know if it's the only way, but in my mind, I like this idea that it's the only way that God can become multiple, right? And the world starts out as an absolute, no relativity, one without a second, right? And then God decides that he's going to see herself as separate. So she kind of pulls herself away and manifests as a separate self here. And so now you've got your first relation, the incarnation to the unmanifest, the mother to the father, Shakti to Shiva. So that's the first relationship. And then, of course, that word there continues to manifest as different things. It gets devotees, get families, get, whatnots. And the relationship just continues to multiply as all of these things have their pretend existence based on relationship, based on relativity. But it's only that presumption of their existence that makes them real. And the relationship that gives them a body, gives them definition, gives them substance, right? And but all of that is tied together with this network of relationships, this network of isness that goes all the way back to God herself. And it is that network of relationships, of these lines of relationship, that keep everything as they should be. And it's those lines of relationship that ultimately just collapse back in to that unity when we give up the idea of being separate and we move back into unity, back into oneness. So as long as God keeps us in this relative world, so long we feel that there are two. If one accepts Shakti, one accepts Brahman as well. If one is aware of night, one is also aware of day. This is all those little strands of relationship that make all of this true. If one is aware of knowledge, then one is also aware of ignorance. But there is another state in which God reveals to his devotee that Brahman is beyond both knowledge and ignorance. It cannot be described in words. What exists, exists. It's an isness, right? And it can't be described in words because it doesn't obey the laws that are necessary for language, right? Every sentence has a subject, object, and a verb. But when you are in reality one without a second, there's no verb, there's no subject, there's no object. So there's no sentence. There's nothing that can be said. There's no time, space, or causation. So your words can't unfold into meaning. You know, there is no past, present, and future. And so all of your words fall short. Nothing can be said. So there's another state. What exists, exists. There's just an isness to it that doesn't fall into any of the rules. After a pleasant conversation with the sadhu, the master returned to the carriage, the holy man walking with him. Sri Ramakrishna looked upon him as a friend of long acquaintance, and they walked arm in arm. Right? That egolessness, we did read this, that egolessness between holy people like that allows them to just connect instantly without the need of time. You know, for us, our egos are quite strong and quite tenacious. We've taken a lot of shelter in our egoism to protect us from this world, to protect us from this unknowing. And so when we get close to another person also with an ego, it takes us quite some time before we learn to trust them enough to let it down, to be vulnerable, to open up a little bit and let them inside. But for a holy person, a person who's done that work and knows the existence of God within them, there's none of that insecurity. There's none of that fear from others. Because they know who they are and they know that what they are cannot be touched by this material world, cannot be affected by it. And so that intimacy is instant and quick. You know, quite often you'll see that when you go see a holy teacher, you know, and they'll take your hand in theirs and just hold your hand and stroke it while they talk to you without even knowing your name. And yet you feel this wonderful connection with them, you know, with Pravrajiko Moksha Prana. You know, that was 25 years ago for me now. And I only saw her for probably a total of 10 minutes, you know. But the amount of love that she was able to express and the amount of space that she was able to create in my ego to get in and to actually touch the heart is amazing. You know, it's breathtaking for us. And so we see it happening here with Ramakrishna just walking up to a sadhu, being so joyful to meet him and to talk to him. And now he just went over and talked to him, and now he's walking away from him arm in arm, you know, walking arm in arm as if they've known each other forever. The master arrived at Surendra's garden, and the very first thing he talked about was the sadhu. The master, oh, he was a very nice man, to Ram. Bring him to Dakshineshwar when you come. He is really a good man. There is a line in a song to the effect that a man cannot recognize a holy person unless he himself is holy. Right? The sadhu believes in God without form. That is good. God is both formless and endowed with form. He is many things more. The absolute and the relative belong to one and the same reality. What is beyond speech and mind is born in the flesh, assuming various forms and engaging in various activities. From that one Om have sprung Om Shiva, Om Kali, and Om Krishna. So you have that Om, that is Om is word, actually. You know, the Hindus went one step farther farther down the path than the Christians. The Christians just started with the idea of word. They didn't know the word. They just said in the beginning was this word. And now we know what that word was. Om, although I think that's metaphoric. But you know why they chose that word Om, right? Anybody, at least what I was told by it, I found it very convincing, that it's spelled Aum, and it's pronounced in Sanskrit. You've got labial, guttural, and palatal and guttural. So you got labial, palatal, and guttural, where noises are made in the mouth. And so, like in Sanskrit, all of the letters in the alphabet can be pronounced either from the back of the throat, or from the palate to the top of the mouth, or from the lips. And so when you say Om, when you say it properly, it goes Om. You follow all the possible sounds that your mouth can make, from the back of the mouth up to the roof of the mouth, and then closing with the lips at the end. So all possible positions of the mouth are employed to say the word Om, which is the embodiment of all possible sounds, all possible things. And that's why that is the name of God, because it is an infinite potential sound that can make any word out of it. It uses the whole gamut of things. So we have that original Om, and then it steps down just a layer into delusion, just a tiny bit. And now you have personal God. You know, you've got Kali, you've got Shiva, you've got Krishna, you've got Jesus, you've got Buddha, you've got all of these. They're the one step down from the ultimate. Suppose the master of a house has sent out a small boy of the family to invite people to a feast. All look on the boy with great fondness and affection because he is the son or grandson of a prominent man. Right? And so that's really our respect for the Christ, or for Ramakrishna, or for Holy Mother, or Buddha, knowing that they are only one step down. They are in direct relationship with the ultimate reality. So we associate them with that family, as it were. And we know that they're of good character and of good name, and that they are safe and loving and generous people to be around. The master took refreshments at Surendra's garden house and then set out for Dakshineshwar with the devotees. It's Thursday, December 27th, 1883. The temple garden was filled with the sweet music of the dawn service, which mingled with the morning melody from the Nahabat. Leaving his bed, Sri Ramakrishna chanted the names of God in sweet tones. Then he bowed before the pictures of the different deities in his room and went to the west porch to salute the Ganges. So you see how he's setting the mind for the day. First thing, not even out of bed, just getting up, he's chanting the names of God, right? So he's employing the mind and the voice, chanting those names of God, and then he employs the body. He goes around to all of the pictures in his room, and there's a lot of them in his room. If you look, there's several hanging in rows on all the walls. He goes from picture to picture to picture, saluting them, however that would be. It can be like in Bellarmont, all of the monks go from temple to temple to temple and do a full Ashtanga Pranam at each temple, as they go at the close of every day and at the start of every morning. And so here Ramakrishna is going around his own room, and saluting each picture on the wall of a holy person. And then he steps out his door to look at the holy river Ganga and salutes the river Ganga as a deity. Some of the devotees who had spent the night in the temple garden came to the master's room and bowed before him. Recall, so they were doing their own obeisance to all the deities and stopped by Thakur's room to bow down to him. So they went to the master's room and bowed down before him. Rakal was staying with the master, and Baburam had come the previous evening. M had been staying there for 2 weeks. Goodness gracious. Everything that I'm reading is very familiar to me, even though that's where my book opened up to. Just a second here. Let me just. Yeah. There is another highlight. Oops. Oh my gosh, now I'm totally lost. All right, I think we're farther on down the chapter. I have another highlight here where he's talking to a musician. And we just finished. Yeah, I think this is where we left off because we had that conversation about being a cat or a monkey. Didn't we talk about that last time? How the kitten is just lays there and stays where the mother places it, and the monkey clings to the mother, holds on to her wherever she goes, and each of us has one of those. So he's talking about them. It says at noon, the host wished to feed the master and the devotees. So Sri Ramakrishna was smilingly pacing the room. Now and then he exchanged a few words with the musician. It is God alone who is both the instrument and the cause. Duryodhana said to Krishna, O Lord, you are seated in my heart. I act as you make me act. So this is the ultimate reality. And this is something, I'm still working on this. I guess we'll work on this for a long time. But this is one of those realizations that really hounds me, that we're not the doer. It's a very important realization to have. Why? Because believing ourselves to be the doer is the glue that binds us to our karma. If we could see the truth of not being the doer, then we would feel the release of our karma. We could go home immediately, right? There would be nothing weighing us down. It's very similar to like a dream. In the morning when we wake up, we don't feel guilty about anything that went on in the dream, right? No matter what it was, it could be the most heinous things that happened in that dream. But when you wake up, you don't carry any of the baggage with you. Why? Because you know the dream to be unreal. You know the dream to be a dream and that there was no doer in it because nothing was done. It was the illusion of something happening in the dream. And so here in this world also, but ultimately Thakur tells us the truth of it is there's no responsibility here because you're not the doer. God is the only doer. You are the mere machine. And, because we can't believe that or because we don't believe that, we are glued to our karma. We're glued to a sense of responsibility for what we do. Master with a smile. Yes, it's true. God is the doer. It is God alone who acts through us. Right? So just like we look through everything else in the universe toward the God behind it, we should be looking through ourselves also. And that's that whole practice of going inward, taking our eyes off the external world, turning around and looking inward. At that point, we're doing the exact same practice that we do when we're facing outward and looking at all the objects of the world. We're looking through them to the divine behind. And so when we go inward, we do that same. We go around and focus inward and we look through our material self at the light of God, that divine image that is within us. He is the doer, undoubtedly, and man is his instrument. But it is also true that an action cannot fail to produce its result. Your stomach will certainly burn if you eat hot chili. It is God who has ordained that chili will burn your stomach. If you commit a sin, you must bear its fruit. But one who has attained perfection, realized God, cannot commit a sin. Why would that be? Anybody want to step out on a limb? Why would it be that a man who is realized, a man who has attained perfection, or woman, obviously, cannot commit a sin? Who wants to catch that ball and toss it back?
Because there's no attachment and identity with the little self.
Right.
So there's nothing to cling to and claim as an action done by a doer.
Right. There's nothing to take that light of love and
self-surrender, Maharaj.
well, they've already surrendered. Yeah, they have already surrendered. Absolutely. They basically like as Cookie says there, they've surrendered their any connection, any attachment to body mind. It's the attachment to body mind that then creates a lower self, an ego, and that egoism, causes all the rest from there on down. And so they don't have an ego. So when that love prompts inside, they act. There's no calculation up here. There's no thinking of cause and effect. There's no thinking of lack or desire or attainment, right? There's pure momentary isness. Everything is spontaneous for them. And so the thought of God becomes their action. There is no body to color their desires. There's no mind to color their desires, and to make their love come out unevenly, come out in a direction instead of uniformly all around. Yeah, good. But one who has attained perfection, who has realized God, cannot commit a sin. An expert singer cannot sing a false note. A man with a trained voice sings the notes correctly. Sa ra ga ma pa da ni. The meal was ready.
All right, can you please tell me where you are reading? Which I lost completely.
Yes.
From reading earlier.
Yes, we are in. Oops, it's not telling me there. Just a second. Yeah.
So you were reading 27.
Yes, I was, but everything was familiar. I think that we had read that last week, and so I flipped forward, and I'm on page 5 in my book, 565. If you want to, let me see here. If
have you gone to the other section yet?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm 9 pages ahead where I started reading.
Okay, so it is already into December 29th?
6, 7, 8. Yes, it is now. The date that I'm reading from right now. Oh goodness, there's not a date for many pages. It's also December 27th, but it's farther down.
Okay, Maharaj, I'll find out. Thank you.
You had stopped. Yeah. You had read something about milk, and then rice, being fed rice by the mother-in-law, and then it ended with him being served at high noon by a musician.
Yes, that's where we are right now.
That's where you stopped last week.
My book is like 369.
Okay, so 369 in the big book.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, no problems. It's true. I did jump, and it is my fault. Very amateurish of me. What to do? All right. The meal was ready. The master and the devotees went to the inner court, where they were treated to a generous feast. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the master was seated again in Ishan's drawing room with M and Shrish. He resumed his conversation with Shrish. Master, what is your attitude toward God? I am he, or master and servant. For the householder, it is very good to look on God as the master. The householder is conscious of doing the duties of life himself. Under such conditions, how can he say, I am he? To him who says, I am he, the world appears as a dream. His mind, his body, even his ego are dreams to him. Therefore, he cannot perform worldly duties. So it is very good for the householder to look on himself as the servant and on God as the master. Hanuman had the attitude of a servant. He said to Rama, O Rama, sometimes I meditate on you and on you as the whole, and on myself as the part. Sometimes I feel that you are the master and I am the servant. But when I have the knowledge of reality, I see that I am you and you are I, right? So it's just like ascending the mountain. It's at a certain part of the mountain, it's like you only get this vista. You're in the trees, so you only see trees and forest around you, and that's your view of the world. And then you get halfway up the mountain, and now it's opened up to a big vista, right? But it's still only a partial vista, and you've still got some trees. But then you get to the top of the mountain, the trees, anything blocking your view is gone. You're above the tree line. All the trees are gone, and there's no mountain anymore blocking your view either. You're at the top. You get a full 360-degree view of everything. That's the one without a second. And so this triad that he's just described here has been arguing in Indian philosophy for 1,000 years. And Ramakrishna here gives this meaning to it. He unifies it or harmonizes it. It's this idea at the bottom of the mountain, from that perspective, there's duality. This is the reality right here, and God is separate and we are separate and we're all separate and we will always be that way. And then you get halfway up the mountain, you've got that qualified non-dualism. God is the whole and I'm part of this, right? And then you get to the top of the mountain and you've got non-dualism, Advaita. And you know that I am he and he is I, that there were not two, there was only one. In the stage of perfect knowledge, one may feel I am he, but that is far beyond the ordinary experience of an ordinary man. Shrish, that is true, sir. The attitude of a servant relieves a man of all of his worries, right? Why would it be that? Because if you're the servant, none of it is yours. You're just taking care of everything. I'm just following orders. I'm just carrying on, doing what's right. But nothing belongs to me, so there's no stress, no fear. The servant depends entirely upon his master. A dog is devoted to its master. It depends on him, and it is at peace. Right? So you can be Thakur's dog. Right? That's your permission right now to be Thakur's dog. Just to know that Thakur is going to feed you, he's going to take care of you. Of course, for your dog, he doesn't need to clothe you, but he'll take care of you. So you might want to put a little subtext in there for that relationship. But, that God takes care of all of your needs. And you can live in this world without having to worry about things. Because the reality of it is, God may not. This is something I've had to go through in the last, because I'm so dramatic about things, but in the last couple of years, I've really had to work through this because I really decided to trust, to be like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just going to be here. I'm going to stay here, just like you said, and let you do the rest. And the rest has just happened, right? And we just go on. We just know this is Mother's business. And she says that she's going to take care of things. And but the thing is when you live like that, when you do that, you have to be willing to live under a bridge. You don't know. Mother may not continue to take care of me in the way that I expect her to take care of me. She may very well put me out under a bridge, have me sleep in a box. And I've worked through that. Every now and then I stop when I'm like sitting here in my room. I'll look around and I say, well, what if I was just sitting under a bridge right now? Would I be okay? And I'd be like, I'd still be me. All of my inner world would still be here. So whether I'm in a room or under a bridge or in a cardboard box, if I establish myself here, right? If I live here and sit in that place and watch the world, I can't be touched. I can't be reached by the material. So yes, we'll be fine under any circumstance and under any condition like that. All we have to do is place ourselves in the Master's care and then trust whatever comes, comes. It's sometimes that's part of the game. There's that story of that disciple of Sri Ramakrishna that was in deep meditation. And at some point, here comes Greg. So he was in deep meditation, and someone came along and offered a blanket to him, set it down next to him while he was in meditation. And he was like, oh, great, I've got a blanket now. And he sat there meditating for a while, and a thief comes along and takes the blanket away. And he's like, oh, now I don't have a blanket anymore. But he accepted, you see, there was non-resistance there. He accepted whatever came or didn't come, whatever came and whatever went was equally all right. So a dog is devoted to its master. It depends upon him and is at peace. So we can test our dependence on God by testing our inner peace. How at peace are you? To the degree that you're touching grace, you're at peace. Master, well, what suits your taste? God with form or the formless reality? But to tell you the truth, he who is formless is also endowed with form. To his bhaktas, he reveals himself as having a form. It is like a great ocean, an infinite expanse of water without any trace of shore. Here and there some of the water has been frozen. Intense cold has turned it into ice. Just so, under the cooling influence, so to speak, of a bhakta's love, the infinite appears to take a form. Again, the ice melts when the sun rises. It becomes water as before. Just so, one who follows the path of knowledge, the path of discrimination, does not see the form of God anymore. To him, everything is formless. The ice melts into formless water with the rise of the sun of knowledge. But mark this, form and formlessness belong to one and the same reality. There's a very interesting thing that occurred to me not too many months ago, where we can see ourselves as being form and formless, right? Everything that God is, we are as well. The macrocosm and the microcosm are the same. We all are just kind of looping fractals inside. So we carry the whole story within every cell of our body. And you think about it, right now, I've got this form, right? And that's pretty hard to convince myself that I'm without form. I'm like, no, this is pretty much me. I'm pretty sure of it. But at night, when I fall asleep and I go into a dream, I suddenly look at my new form. I'm in a totally different form, right? So that me, that is the true me, transfers from this reality, this form, transfers seamlessly and literally seamlessly. You do it without thinking or even being aware of it. Transfer out of this form into a new form, into a whole new set of realities in your dream. And you don't question it. You don't look around and be like, hey, what happened to my orange bedspread? But wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why don't I have any hair? This isn't me. What's going on? This isn't me. We don't at all do that. Why? Because we're in our true nature at that point. We can identify with anything. And that's why one of the names of God is identity. Because anything he comes near to, his empathy is so complete, his love is so pure, that he becomes whatever is near. And so we also do that. At perhaps some split moment between leaving this body and entering into the dream body, somewhere in there's got to be a space where we're not the body, where we're not the mind, and yet how easily that Atman can transfer from being identified to this body to being identified with a different body, identified with this world, identified with a whole new world, identified with all these friends and family, and now identified with a whole new set of friends and family. And so you do this, you demonstrate this truth of God every single day of your life. It's amazing that we don't recognize it, that we think everything is so concrete, when really everything, even ourselves, are so fluid. So formlessness and form belong to one and the same reality, right? And it's interesting because I don't know how to think about that actually. Anyway, at dusk, the master was ready to start for Dakshineshwar. He stood on the south porch of the drawing room, talking to Ishan. Someone remarked that the chanting of God's holy name did not always produce results. Ishan said, "How can you say that? The seeds of the Ashwatha tree are no doubt tiny, but in them lie the germs of big trees. It may take a very long time for them to grow." "Yes, yes," said the master. "It does. It takes a long time to see the effect." Next to Ishan's was his father-in-law's house. Sri Ramakrishna stood at the door of this house, ready to get into a carriage. Ishan and his friends stood around him to bid him adieu. Sri Ramakrishna said to Ishan, "You are living in the world as a mudfish lives in mud. It lives in the mud, but its body is not stained." There are both vidya and avidya in the world of Maya. Who may be called a Paramahamsa? He who, like a swan, can take the milk from a mixture of milk and water, leaving aside the water. He who, like an ant, can take the sugar from the mixture of sugar and sand and leave aside the sand, right? So this world that we live in, there's things that are going to take us toward the truth, right? Reducing our ego. And then there are things that are going to take us toward egoism, increasing our ego, increasing the thickness of the veil. And so it's through discernment, right? Constant discerning that we do this. Is it changing or is it unchanging? We're only interested in that which does not change. That's where we want to make our residence. that's where we want to pitch our tent, is clearly in that space within us that does not change, the home of the unchanging. Right? And then those things that are light, those things that take us toward unity. Vivekananda says anything that takes you toward unity, right, is a virtue. That's vidya. And anything that takes you away from unity or requires the multiplicity to exist, that is avidya. That is unhelpful. That is the dark. And so we want to be like swans, these mythical swans. I guess there's a belief in Indian, I don't know what you call that science, but that the swans have ability to separate milk from water. I think it probably comes from that's the way it looks when you are feeding the swans and they go down, they do that thing, and they can separate out all the breadcrumbs from the water, just like. And they can also do that if there's some milk or something in the water, they can also kind of collect it up that way. So it looks like they're separating it out like that. And we have to develop that ability. We have to be able to discern whether something is light or dark really quickly. We have to know so we can either avoid it or be a part of it. It was evening. The master stopped at Ram's house on his way to Dakshineshwar. He was taken to the drawing room, and there he engaged in a conversation with Mahendra Goswami. Mahendra belonged to the Vaishnava sect and was Ram's neighbor, so Ramakrishna was fond of him. The master: the worshippers of Vishnu and the worshippers of Shakti will all ultimately reach one and the same goal. The ways may be different. The true Vaishnavas do not criticize the Shaktas, right? So this is that thing. It's like, understanding that all of us in our spiritual endeavors, no matter what flavor or style or tradition we're in, all of us will arrive at the same point. We all may be rather surprised to see each other there. Oh my God, you too? But we'll all get there. And that's how we should understand. And he says, that the true Vaishnavas, the true Christians, the true Vaishnavas used to be very, they were the only ones. This was the only way. If you believed in any of that other stuff, you weren't going to make it. Right. And so very much like the Christians and not all Christians, but the Christians in the modern day America also. He says, but those who are true, those who are the real spiritual seekers, they know that God is not so simple, that God is not so small, that there is room for everyone and everything in God's creation. And he, in that unconditioned love, will not place a condition on you. He will give that grace to you, has given that grace to you. Goswami, smiling. Shiva and Parvati are father and mother. Sri Ramakrishna, out of his stock of 12 English words, and sweetly, thank you. Then he added, yes, father and mother. Goswami, besides, it is a sin to criticize anyone, especially a devotee of God. All sins may be forgiven, but not the sins of criticizing a devotee. Master, oh, but this idea of sin does not by any means affect all. For instance, the Ishvara Kotis, such as incarnations of God, they are above sin. Sri Chaitanya is an example of this. A child walking on a narrow bridge and holding to his father may slip into the ditch, but what can never happen? But that can never happen if the father holds the child by the hand. Listen, I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love. I said to her, here is your righteousness, and here is your unrighteousness. Take them both, and give me pure love for you. Here is purity, and here is your impurity. Take them both. Give me pure love for you. O Mother, here is your virtue, and here your vice. Take them both. Give me pure love for you. Goswami, yes, sir. That is right. Master, you should undoubtedly bow before all views, but there is a thing called unswerving devotion to one ideal. True, you should salute everyone, but you must love one ideal with your whole soul. That is unswerving devotion. And a very important point, that you have to choose a path. You can't just float above all of them and accept all of them and think that that is the place to be. You know, that's swimming at the top of the water. You have to dive deep. You have to pick a tradition. You have to pick a guru. You have to pick an ideal. And then you work in that spot. You dig your well in that spot. Ramakrishna in another place tells that parable. You know, if you dig for a while in this spot and don't get anything, then you go over to the Sufis and you dig there for a little while, and that gets too serious after a while. Like, no, it's not my thing. And then you go dig with the Buddhists for a while, and that's nice. You learn a few things, but then somebody invites you over to the Native American Sweat Lodge. Like, oh, we'll go try that for a while. And you go do that, and then through your friends there, you hear about, oh, the peyote, you know, or the those teachers down in Peru, you know, in the Andes, and you're like, oh, I've got to go try that. And you'll hang out there for a while, and then you come back to your Christian family for a while. That's not the way. That's saluting everybody, no doubt. That's the right part. Salute everybody and recognize their truth, but pick your direction and make your efforts count by making them build in a direction, taking you forward through a guru, through a teacher, toward a singular ideal. And that's how we progress and how we grow. The rest of it, you know, is what happens when we put ego in charge of our spiritual life. You know, I like this. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I'm tired of this. I want some of that. Oh, that looks interesting. Let's go over there for a while. Right? And we pander to our senses. We become what I would call a spiritual sensualist. Right? Which means that we only do spiritual practices that give us a buzz. You know, we only do the ones that are pleasant for us, that make us happy or make us feel good, or makes it seem like they're the right thing. But there's no depth, there's no renunciation, there's no self-control. You know, there's no work being done. It's just being at a cocktail party and going around and having nice conversation with everybody there. You know, but at the end of the night, you don't have a friend. At the end of the night, you've gone through your niceties with everyone and you leave the party. So you should undoubtedly bow before all views, but there is a thing called unswerving devotion to one ideal. True, you should salute everyone, but you must love one ideal with your whole soul. That is unswerving devotion. Hanuman could not take delight in any other form than that of Rama. The gopis, they had such a single-minded love for the cowherd Krishna of Vrindavan that they did not care to see the turbaned Krishna of Dwaraka. So not only did they have one ideal, but they had that one ideal and one one aspect of that ideal that they were so devoted to. When Krishna went to become the king, left the village, and put on the big fancy turban, the equivalent of a crown, and became king. They didn't want anything to do with that Krishna. They're like, oh, we want our cowherd boy, the simple guy that used to play the flute with us in the woods. Come back. A wife may serve her husband's brothers by fetching water or in other ways, but she cannot serve them in the way she does her husband. With him, she has a special relationship. And so this is that special relationship. That's what happens when we choose an ideal, choose a path. We develop then a special relationship, an intimate relationship, a deeper relationship that's more enduring. And it won't be just as long as we're having fun or just as long as we feel good about things or good about ourselves. It'll be a relationship that can lead us through some real tribulations, some real difficult times. But we will have a trust that is formed with God. We'll have a faith that has formed in that relationship. And we'll know that all is well, even if it seems that things aren't. Whereas if we haven't found that bond, and we're just kind of floating and visiting and playing, in all of the different spiritual backyards, when those times of tribulation come, you might not have a faith that's as deep as the trouble. And you get carried away. You'll get caught. Ram treated the master to sweets, and Sri Ramakrishna was ready to start for Dakshineshwar. He put on his woolen shawl and cap and got into the carriage with M and the other devotees. Ram and his friends saluted the master. All right. And we'll stop there, and I'm going to put a nice big marker here so that I don't be the amateur next week.